right. So Laguna S2, one versus Claude Opus 5. One is a free open source local model. The other is Anthropic's flagship, sitting at 43.3% on Frontier Bench and 68.8% on agentic coding. And these two are playing completely different games, which is exactly why this comparison is worth doing. Okay, so the open source versus frontier model debate is very real right now for anyone building on AI. And we're running Laguna S2, one versus Claude Opus 5 across 4 real tests with every data point pulled from verified sources, official docs, and independent press. And yeah, the final score is going to surprise you because one of these models wins on price and the other wins on proof. And figuring out which one actually matters for your use case is way more interesting than a simple trophy moment. So who is this actually for? Developers and teams deciding where to route AI workloads. Because pick the wrong model and you're either paying way too much per token or you're shipping on a model you can't actually verify. And both of those are real problems we're going to get into. Test 1 is multi-step reasoning accuracy. And this one matters a lot if you're using AI for anything complex like code generation, research, or chained workflows. Because if a model can't reason through hard problems reliably, everything downstream breaks. And what we actually found when we looked at the data here is pretty telling. Okay, so here's what we got. Claude Opus 5 has a full stack of published scores, 43.3% on Frontier Bench, 30.2% on Arc AGI 3, 68.8% on Deep S2E, 70.6% on OS World. Laguna S2, 1, no published data on any of these, 0, and you genuinely cannot compare what doesn't exist, so the honest situation is pretty one-sided. Claude Opus 5 takes test 1, and it's not even close, because it's the only model with any published reasoning benchmarks at all, Laguna S2. One has thinking mode and a MOE architecture that sounds good on paper, but there's nothing to verify it against, so the score sits at Laguna S2. 1-0, Claude Opus 5-1 after the first test. Now, I want to be honest here, missing benchmarks for Laguna S2. One, don't mean it reasons badly, they mean we genuinely don't know. And the community is frustrated about this too, with some users calling it vaporware until third-party devals show up. So take this verdict with a grain of salt if you're open to running it through your own workflows first. Test 2 is API pricing, and this one is super concrete. If you're running high-volume production workloads, the cost model you pick will either eat your budget or free it up entirely, because these two models have completely different cost structures, and that changes the math depending on your scale. Okay, so the numbers are right there on screen. Laguna S2, 1 is free, open source, local deployment, 0 marginal token cost, while Claude Opus 5 runs $5 per million tokens in and $25 per million tokens out at standard rates. And fast mode pushes that to $10 and $50, so the trade-off is real and the gap is not small. Laguna S2. One takes test 2, because 0 marginal token cost is a structural win over any per token pricing model if your volume is high enough. And that ties things up at Laguna S2.1. Claude Opus 5.1, which is pretty interesting given how different these models actually are. That said, free isn't always cheaper in practice. Laguna S2. One's cost is your GPU, your electricity, your ops time. So if you're running a small workload or don't have the hardware already, Claude Opus 5's $5 input rate might actually be the cheaper path, and the total cost of ownership depends a lot on your specific setup. Test 3 is response latency under load. And this matters if your users are waiting on real-time outputs or you're chaining model calls in an agentic workflow, because speed isn't just a nice to have when a slow model in a multi-step pipeline compounds really fast. So the numbers on screen look like Laguna S2.1 wins easily at 158 tokens per second on an RTX 3090 versus 54.3 to 54.9 tokens per second on the Cloud API for Opus 5. But these are completely different test setups. Local single user GPU versus shared cloud infrastructure. So you can't really stack those numbers and call it a race. This test is a tie because the environments are too different to call a winner honestly. Laguna S2. One's 158 TOPS is single user local, and Opus 5's cloud latency is a shared API with time to first token ranging from 2.4 to 4 seconds. So the score stays at Laguna S2, 1-1 Claude Opus 5.1 with 1 tied heading into the last test. Honestly, your real world latency depends almost entirely on your setup. Run Laguna locally on good hardware with no other users, and you'll probably feel the speed difference. But on a shared server or a loaded GPU, that 158 TOPS figure won't hold. And Opus 5 also has a fast mode at roughly 2.5 times standard speed if latency is your actual priority. Test 4 is context window. And this matters if you're feeding in long documents, big code bases, or running extended conversations without losing earlier context. Because a bigger window sounds great on paper, but what actually counts is how well the model uses it. Both models claim 1 million tokens on the headline spec. So on the surface, it's a match. But Opus 5 goes further with 128,000 max output tokens, automatic context management on paid plans, and a minimum cache length dropped to 512 tokens. While Laguna S2, One matches the headline number but has no published data on any of those fidelity features. Context window is a tie because both models match on the 1 million token headline, and we can't penalize Laguna for missing fidelity data that was never published. The final score lands at Laguna S2. 1-1, Claude Opus 5-1, with two tests tied, which is kind of wild given the gap in benchmark coverage between these two. I take this tie with a grain of salt though, because Opus 5's context features are verified and documented with auto management, 128,000 output, and a halved cache threshold. While Laguna S2, one's 1 million token claim comes from a single press review with zero fidelity testing behind it. So if you need to trust what actually happens at the far end of a long context, Laguna doesn't yet have the receipts. Okay, so where does Laguna S2? One clearly win: cost and control. Zero marginal token cost means every inference is free. Once you have the hardware, data never leaves your machine, which is a big deal for privacy-sensitive work. You get 158 talks locally with no rate limits. Because it's open source, MoE, you can fine-tune it, quantize it, and run it however you want. And where does Claude Opus 5 clearly win? Proven performance. It dominates every published reasoning benchmark at 43.3% on Frontier Bench, 30.2% on ARC AGI 3, 1861 on GDPval.aa, plus verified 1 million token context with 128,000 output tokens and a fast mode at roughly 2.5 times standard speed, all backed by 8+ benchmarks from independent sources, so you actually know what you're getting. So here's the decision rule. If your workload is high volume, privacy sensitive, or per token cloud costs are a hard constraint, go with Laguna S2. One, but only if you're willing to get your hands dirty and verify it on your own tasks first. And if you need proven reasoning quality and can absorb the $5 to $25 per million token cost, Claude Opus 5 is the safer, more verified choice.